So first of all, I'd like to thank you all for joining in and listening in to this AMA session. It's real nice to see so many people here, and I would also like to welcome our speakers, of course, who have decided to participate here. We're really glad to have you all here. So together with some of these key players in the industry who is really paving the way by providing the technical and physical infrastructure to build these kind of applications we'll discuss today. We'll deep dive into the synergy of AI and DePIN today. So we have seen a lot of buzz in this market cycle around the DePIN. So we will try to explore today how these technologies are paving the way for a safer and more efficient future, and also how they can be combined to drive growth and adoption of DePIN and decentralized applications even faster and further. So I thought that we could just begin with some kind of roundtable introductions first of all, so we get to know our guests better. So why don't you all just tell us a bit more about your background, what you do, and what you're working on currently? Why don't you go first, Mark? Stage is yours.
Hey guys, yeah, thank you for having me. Very excited about being here this evening. A little bit of background about myself. I'm the co-founder at Aether, and we build an enterprise-focused GPU compute marketplace where data centers, tech companies, enterprises, crypto mining farms can all connect and contribute their often unutilized GPUs, or underutilized, I should say, to earn rewards. And then on the other side of the marketplace, buyers can now take advantage of this new supply, higher performance, and often significantly lower prices than they'd find anywhere else.
Wow, sounds really interesting. Thank you, Mark. How about you, Tommy? Why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself and what you do?
Yeah, sure. Thanks, Simon. I come from a background in physics and then ML. And for a few years now, I've been working at Foundry, where we really focus on supplying accelerated compute to decentralized protocols. So work with a bunch of protocols, BitTensor, Akash, Flock, supplying them data center grade hardware. So A100s, H100s, and yeah, making kind of that strong commitment to Web3 protocols rather than locking them up with the big guys like Disney and etc.
Thank you, Tommy. Real nice to have you here. And what about you, San, at Flock?
Yeah. Hey, sorry, I just used our official account to join, but yeah, cool.
No
So yeah,
problem.
my name's Dan. CEO and co-founder of Flock. I actually worked in traditional AI industry for like about 10 years as a researcher and also a senior manager. So I majority of my time was in research and natural language processing, knowledge graph, all this traditional AI industry angles, until one day I just realized federated learning can be a very killing technology when it comes to decentralization, and it actually can make decentralized machine learning happen. So that's where I decided to join. To actually join the Web3 industry, right? To co-founded Flock, and then we've been trying to promote what Flock is doing as a research topic. So we publish papers on top journals, top conferences about Flock as a technology term. So the name itself is actually a pun. It's a combination of federated learning and blockchain. So Flock. Right. So yeah, I'll explain more maybe later. Thank you.
Sounds really cool. Thank you for being here. David, do you want to do a brief introduction of yourself? I reckon most of you already know him, but it's short.
Yep, sure. As part of the organizer here, thank you so much for all the guests today to join us on this DePIN and AI AMA today. So my name is David. I'm a founder and CEO of Privacy. We are also decentralized infrastructure for making AI inference and using fully homomorphic encryption. And we based on Dama's concrete ML to building efficient machine learning pipelines to apply to machine learning or AI applications, and using our network to share the data values inside the nodes and without privacy concerns. Yeah, thank you so much.
Thank you, David. So nice to have all of you here. So we have prepared a small set of questions that we thought that we could just go through with all of you, and they mostly relate to DePIN, of course, but also how DePIN will be integrated with AI, but now in the future, and also what kind of your angles and opinions are on the different concepts about it. So I thought that we can just go like one by one with Mark, Tommy, and San to discuss the different topics. So Mark, why don't you give your opinion or view on how do project teams plan to integrate AI capabilities with DePIN architecture to enhance the data security and processing efficiency? What do you think?
Yeah, I'm not on the machine learning side, so I'll leave that more AI stuff to maybe some of our other guests. But what I can say is that on the DePIN side, one of, I guess, DePIN's superpowers is essentially how great it is at managing or essentially offering utility for underutilized resources, right? So when we talk about processing efficiency, I think in particular, when we look at I guess the bottom line for many of these businesses building AI models, efficiently managing compute or accessing compute in a more efficient way, I think is a huge opportunity for the market that DePIN has a very strong ability to address. I mean, we took a look at enterprise grade high performance compute equipment across the US, for example, and in data centers. On average, you're sitting at between 15 to 18% utilization rate in many of these data centers for these H100s and high performance compute GPUs, and that's a crazy underutilization that I think DePIN has a fantastic opportunity to address. Couple this with the fact that there is at the moment just limited supply, right? There's just not necessarily enough compute out there that's accessible. And you look at the percentage of that compute that's being bought by companies that necessarily have the ability to expose that hardware to other companies once it's purchased, right? They're essentially buying it for internal use cases. And from what I'm seeing out there, a large portion of these companies are kind of FOMO buying their hardware in their kind of attempt to get into the AI ecosystem, and they're buying essentially ahead of their skis, right? And they're overestimating their compute requirements, and essentially they're purchasing large amounts of this equipment that they then have to sit and spend money to operate or have it just sitting idle. And because they're just standard tech companies that don't necessarily generally look at on-selling their hardware, it becomes a massive cost to them. And again, I think DePIN has the ability to kind of go to these companies and say, hey, here's a really, really easy, really simple solution that allows you to expose your hardware to a broad global network that can match you with compute demand, and then de-risk that compute exposure on your bottom line. So I think DePIN has a big part to play in how we manage efficiency, particularly from a compute perspective.
Yeah, that's really interesting. Thank you, Mark. I think it's really good to get the hardware perspective in all of these technologies as well, not only speak about the applications we build, of course. So what about you, Tommy? How do you think that project teams plan to integrate AI capabilities with DePIN architecture?
Yeah, I've definitely taken a strong pro-privacy stance. I think it's critical for a lot of really useful ML applications. That's why we're excited about projects like Flock and privacy. And at the foundry level, that's why we want to commit GPUs to them. much more generally, I think DePIN is actually really the only solution to allow Web3s to tackle these problems. Like paying $10 an hour at AWS or GCP per card is just not an acceptable pathway for protocol teams to build. It's just not affordable. DePIN marketplaces allow founders to use the inherent benefits of blockchain, right? Like its distributed nature, to train on data without violating privacy. Processing efficiency is a really good question. I think, right, you're always gonna train more efficiently in a centralized manner, but I think by targeting kind of different use cases, that's where you really see the benefits of blockchain. And again, that's why I think Privacy, Flock, these are just really really well positioned projects because they're using the inherent benefits of blockchain to solve problems. So yeah, I really think DePIN is kind of the necessary key to allowing these teams to build and kind of tackle these problems.
Thank you, Tommy. Really interesting. And what about you, San? Well, what do you think?
Yeah, thank you, Tommy. Also, I think DePIN is quite interestingly. It's a set of industry where I think the crowd source can be used in a very much efficient way, right? Which I feel like it's really it's really empowering the blockchain community and also the blockchain technology to do some real use cases, which I feel very excited about, and especially for compute, right? If we think about centralized solutions for AI and machine learning models, where you have to send your data to a central server, that's always a pain and a concern to many of the sensitive industries, for example, finance, healthcare. It's always hard for those companies to easily just send their data or adapt to any centralized solution. So there has to be a decentralized way for them to be able to get into or plug into some superpowered AI models, right? So DePIN can be a solution where the good thing for DePIN and the DePIN solutions are, users, they can just co-earn a model which is not defined by anyone else. So like big businesses or companies, they can just form their own interest group. They can fine tune a model together using DePIN infrastructure. So that model is not given out to any third party. They earn that model, and also that direction of the model training is also governed by their own interest groups, right? So they don't have to hand it over to any third party, just like we saw the scandal about Google's Gemini, right? It's like totally amplified the bias. So yeah. So I think that's what I am hoping actually for the DP industry to evolve in this cycle or even the future cycles, because I've seen lots of such interesting projects coming up now, right? Not only just some playful DePIN projects with either a shoe or a gaggle that can help you mine something. That we now see many interesting projects which are really using the DePIN to empower either compute or data resources that actually can contribute to some business use cases that's actually valuable to the industry, to the market, right? So yeah, that's very exciting.
Yeah, definitely. Really exciting. Thank you, Sam. So that was more touching upon, okay, what do we think DePIN can contribute with here and why it's important that it exists. So I just thought that we could all also discuss, so what are really the plans and strategies going ahead to further develop the AI and machine learning and plus DePIN capabilities when integrating them? And what challenges in terms of the industry development do you see for this to happen even further? Why don't you go first, Mark?
Yeah, I think one of the biggest challenges facing DePIN, right, is, funnily enough, the opportunity of consumer compute, right? So I think consumer compute, the graphics cards that sit in people's desktop PCs or gaming PCs, for example, they probably offer the single biggest untapped compute ecosystem if we talk about the potential for utilization within a maybe an AI or machine learning context, right? The challenge or the problem here is that currently it's pretty much impossible to aggregate all of that compute and then package it in any way that meets the service quality and uptime requirements of enterprise compute buyers, right? It's really, really hard to convince big tech companies that a decentralized consumer grade GPU network is something that they can build their stack on, right? Because you can't ever guarantee that, you know, this desktop PC that's sitting in this person's bedroom isn't just going to be switched off at night, or the bandwidth that's being utilized in this household isn't just going to be throttled as a result of like a big gaming session. So I think one of the biggest opportunities moving forward will be solving for that challenge, right? Solving for the ability to aggregate usefully and package usefully that consumer compute, right? I think it'll be really interesting because I think it's a technical problem, but it's also like an education problem. I think convincing tech companies that this is a suitable compute layer to kind of engage in will be equally tricky. It'll probably start in adjacent sectors and eventually kind of be adopted by big tech companies a little bit later. So yeah, I think that's kind of a major challenge at Aether, where we always say we're very enterprise focused. So actually, all of the compute within our DePIN is actually enterprise grade, sitting in data centers or connected to enterprise grade network infrastructure. So we don't actually have any consumer grade cards in our network at all. We've got 44,000 GPUs connected to our network, and none of them are kind of consumer grade, and that's because at the moment we just can't sell them. We can't package and sell them in kind of any useful or meaningful way. But one thing that we have done, which I think is really interesting to kind of talk about, is we actually announced just 2 days ago or 3 days ago now the launch of what we call the Aether Edge. And it's a new consumer mining device, right? So it's a box about the size of a Sonos speaker. You can see the kind of information on our main Twitter page. But essentially, we looked at what workloads we could convince enterprise customers to push to the edge, right? And then we built a mining device, like a physical box. We partnered with Qualcomm, right? This is their latest AI inferencing chip. And this box will essentially unify that consumer edge compute layer in the best way possible that we could think of, right? In the short term, to create this kind of bridge between enterprise compute and that consumer edge interface. So I think this is really, really cool. That's called the Aether Edge, and that'll go live in the next kind of couple of months. But yeah, long story short, consumer compute's simultaneously like the biggest opportunity, I think, at least from my perspective, but also probably the hardest piece to access at the moment.
Yeah, really interesting. Thank you, Mark. What about you, Tommy? What do you see as the main industry challenges for development when integrating AI into DePIN technologies?
I think at a technical level, the biggest challenges are obviously around the ability to transfer data efficiently and the ability to protect privacy. I don't think there's much value in doing, massive foundation model training across GPUs that are distributed across the world. You're kind of taking on untractable problems there. I'll say again, I think most important to the success of the decentralized AI space is founders and investors looking for real synergies between Web3 and AI and taking advantage of those. To me, that's looking at distributed techniques like federated learning, using blockchain incentives to bootstrap supply of edge node compute, and optimize for response time, right? If we can have AI models sitting at the edge. I'll definitely echo Mark that this is, in my opinion, like just a massive business development challenge that Web3 faces here, right? Web3's reputation outside of Web3 is less than spectacular, but I think we have a unique position here because GPUs are in such demand, because AI is in such demand. People don't necessarily have an option to go elsewhere, especially if you're talking about accessing, high-powered compute. That's why Foundry, I think, is so committed to being as professional a GPU provider as possible, right? And kind of supply, state-of-the-art HPC to these compute marketplaces to ensure good end user experiences. So I really see it as an opportunity. It's a challenge for sure, but it's also an opportunity. And if we can capitalize on this elevated demand of GPUs and the scarcity of GPUs and drive real end user adoption, we're kind of overcoming a massive hurdle as far as traction in Web3. And I think you're going to see the entirety of crypto benefit from it.
Thank you, Tommy. Really appreciate it. Real nice insights. How about you, Sam? What do you think?
Yeah, I feel like similarly the capability of what DePIN can do, right? Because currently there are still some let's say the limitations of the hardwares on the DePIN side. Whether it's really so Web3 or the crypto world, they have a vast majority of users, but not necessarily everyone holding a 4090 graphics card that can efficiently participating into AI training or even fine tuning, right? So yeah, that's the thing. Like the accessibility to those high compute powers are not to everyone. But if you want to do DePIN, you want to decentralize the world, you want something that everyone can hold, right? Everyone can use. So whether or how you can design your framework, your protocol that can encourage everyone to join training together or join inferencing together. So that's a very important task, to be honest. I feel like if you're just wasting some compute powers from a vast majority, I think that's a waste to the whole society. I really want to see more projects coming out to the industry that they can actually really using DePIN, really using taking advantage of this vast this large market, but actually using them to some real use cases. That's for one. And then the other challenges I think is also about how DePIN can actually use AI to solve their own problems, right? So because I'm standing on the point of AI project, but I know there are many DePIN projects where we can also think the other way around, kind of like the AI agents or AI capabilities that can be used to the DePIN projects to, for example, optimize graphic cards usages or even electricity usages, right? Just to make things even more optimal for when it comes. So when this thing happens in a centralized world, maybe it's all just a rule-based decision, or it's all just a centralized decision by one set of algorithm. But maybe this can be done dynamically based on interest of every different users, right? So either AI training or whatever use cases DePIN is doing that can be more efficient. So yeah, I think those are the interesting points. Also the challenges that I want to see. Many more projects can come up and solve.
Yeah, thank you, Sam. Really insightful. So I thought that it would also hand over the word to David to kind of wrap up the first two questions and what his perspective is.
Yep, thank you, Simon. Thank you all the guests. I kind of agree with almost everyone here. Mark and Tommy, they speaking about the resource management by DePIN, which is on the computation resource side, which is I think it's quite important as one of the characteristics from the DePIN network. It can optimize the computation resources usage. And I also quite agree with Sam, and further learning on the training side is definitely has big advantage on managing the models and decentralizedly for inside the decentralized network. And quite super. And also I heard Mark about the. I actually seen this news a few days ago about uh, the the competition a consumer node called Edge by Acer, and I'm quite excited about it because I think that is probably one potential solution to solve one of the challenges for individuals to join in DePIN and provide resources on the inference part. Because I guess the edge computing can solve a lot of AI inference application uh, very efficiently without centralize all the computation in the cloud or in the computation pools, and that is something I want to address this with. If we're gonna go with decentralized inference, then probably we also need to consider how we can solve the privacy concerns because the data is distributed and there are also uh, uh, um, complies or laws. I mean, we need to solve it for sure to make sure the individual user data is not is protected. And I think combining ZK or FHE is probably one way to partially solve the privacy concerns. Make sure the data is stay security, and the inference we do is end to end. I think that's something we can work on together with a combination with different technologies. Yeah, thank you so much.
Thank you, David. Very insightful. So, I mean, it seems like there in the previous cycles have been some narrative about the AI plus DePIN concepts, but they haven't really become the main market hotspot like in this cycle. So, in your opinion, what are really the key factors that are crucial for the explosion of the AI plus DePIN track here? What do you think, Mark?
Yeah, I don't think anyone really knows. I've got a couple of kind of guesses. I guess first of all, I think just looking at DePIN as a persistent narrative, it's probably one of the most familiar narratives to people everywhere, right? DePIN as a term was only coined about a year ago, but you know, Bitcoin is essentially a DePIN, right? Proof of work ecosystems that were so familiar to us for, you know, the first essentially decade of Web3 are effectively DePINs, right? So I think DePIN has been a pretty familiar place for the community, for the Web3 community for a very long time. And I also think just, you know, maybe it's a result of its familiarity to people from a Bitcoin perspective, or maybe just because it just seems to make sense. I think DePIN's always been a very easy to understand narrative, right? And for me, that's kind of the key reason why it's pumping this cycle, right? Because if you look at kind of the trends of last cycle, right, very heavily DeFi, you know, ZK Sync, roll-ups, right? I don't think 99% of crypto even understood what any of that was about, right? I think that it was just a totally dull set of narratives for the vast majority of the crypto kind of community. And I think AI, first of all, has like reignited some really strong narratives and interest in the kind of crypto community. I think AI and its like direct correlation and connection to compute requirements and GPUs is kind of somewhat synonymous with some of the kind of narratives that we had before with GPU shortages in crypto. So I think there is like just a really interesting set of kind of overlaps that have coincidentally resulted in a narrative that I think is very, very easy to understand for the average consumer, but also speaks to, I think, the type of projects that people somewhat expect to see in crypto, right? So I think we're touching on some elements of the narrative that are simultaneously really exciting in how new they are, but also really familiar, and that's kind of a little bit of a perfect storm, I think, particularly based on the complexity of last cycle.
Thank you, Mark. Really interesting to hear your perspective on what's going on here. What about you, Tommy?
Yeah, I think Mark said it right. I think perfect storm is a great way to describe it, right? I mean, historically, we've never seen a three-sided marketplace in crypto really be successful at fostering a significant demand side. But I really think that the market dynamics are such that DePIN is poised to, like you said in the question, see a massive year of user adoption, because people really don't have a choice. If I'm a builder, a student, a hobbyist, it's almost impossible for me to access HPC at scale. And even if I can access it at scale, if I can find a way, it's not even close to affordable. But if I hear about Akash or these other compute marketplaces where I can get GPUs at a fourth or a third of the cost and not really have to sacrifice anything on the user experience side, then that's a game changer for me. Because there is such a scarcity of GPUs, because the vast majority of the GPUs are being locked up in enterprise deals, I actually think you'll see people forced, for the first time ever, forced to look to Web3 to access these commodities, which is a dynamic that we haven't seen before with any DePIN marketplace, right? Even if it was cheaper, perhaps on Web3, like for storage, people are never forced to do that, right? It's like OneDrive is still integrated with everything people are using, so there's no real way to drive people to Web3. But this has completely changed, I think. But I think what's really, really important for the industry as a whole is to ensure that UI UX is as seamless as possible, ensure that those integrations are there. I'm not usually an advocate for Web3 just trying to mimic Web 2, but when it comes to UI UX, I break this rule, and I think it's necessary. If we can create an experience where we abstract away all the crypto and users don't even have any idea what's going on under the hood. They don't even know it's crypto, right? But they're getting access to HPC in a cheap way, in an easy way, in an enjoyable developer experience way, then I think we can change the narrative around crypto marketplaces as a whole. And I think what you'll really see, like a rising tide lifts all boats situation there, where if we can capitalize on the fact that GPUs are in such scarcity and in such demand, and prove that crypto marketplaces do things better and coordinate marketplaces that are more efficient, then I think you'll see all crypto marketplaces see a big spike in demand and prove real utility, which will be really cool.
Thank you, Tommy. Very interesting to hear about your perspective. What about you, Sam? What do you think what can make this explode?
I think the thing is, I like the question. It's a bit tricky question. I'm not sure whether the question itself is true. There are some narratives, in the past about AI and DePIN, of course, and then, because those projects are still there, right? And they're still big, like the recent merge of Ocean Fetch and Singularity to ASI, which I happened to just had a panel in Dubai with Benga. So, many of the DePIN, let's say the DePIN corresponding to AI, are something that's that's being talked about, like say in previous cycles. For example, if you know you're going to build AI, then of course you need somewhere to make your storage, right? So protocols like Protocol Labs or Ocean Protocol, that they're doing decentralized storage already, which it can be used, and then it still can be used in the new cycle or any future cycles, because it's a fundamental thing there, right? And similarly, for compute, decentralized compute, there are many projects now doing decentralized computation. Well, there was in the past as well, right? But in the past, the require for AI model training compute isn't that high, because now everyone's using large language model as like the one-off solution for almost everything. So yeah, now you have higher and higher requirements for the entry bar to actually do a training in a decentralized way, basically, right? And then let's apart from that, models, there are models might be a new thing, because nobody really talking about the model or the model offering in the past, right? So yeah, I think I wouldn't say there's no narratives about AI and DePIN in this cycle. What I see is many of those DePIN projects, either old projects or new projects, they're all trying to talk about AI because, well, A, it's hot, and B, there are opportunities for AI to be added on to DePIN, either helping AI models to be built, right, or using AI as agents or multi-agents to help DePIN products to be more efficient. So yeah, I think everyone's talking about this. So it's it's still popular and very popular, actually.
Yeah, and it might become even more popular, it sounds like, if all of this comes through, of course. Really good insight, Sam. Thank you. What do you think, David?
I think every guest has it's a very perfect opinions on this part already. I mean, it's just like timing, because AI has been comes to a point it needs resources to be perfectly managed in a decentralized way, then the AI needs computation resources, and the DePIN offers it. That's it, and then it's the good timing to start this track, and a lot of projects are coming to provide innovative solutions on it, building infrastructure, building application. I think that's I agree. It's perfect storm.
Thank you, David. So, David, now when you already are speaking, we would also like to know what kind of inspiration and vision led every founder of Privacy here to design and launch the product, both from an end game perspective, but also what kind of problems we aim to solve in the future. And this can also be related to the DePIN that we are discussing, of course.
Yeah, sure. So privacy. So basically, we have like two fundamental products. One is the DePIN network we are building as infrastructure, which is we formalize FHE machine learning pipelines and apply it to all kinds of applications we can find in the space, and make it decentralizedly. And this is the infrastructure we built, and we actually started quite late on building this infrastructure. It's actually mid of last year, and we learned from a few other very successful DePIN projects from many different perspectives, technology-wise and token economics-wise. I mean, we learned quite a lot from them. So basically, we designed this as also a kind of resources. We kind of crowdsourcing this, one of the resources, to public, and building our network by token incentive ways. So we launch kind of utility tokens, and these utility tokens can be used for staking, to make sure the participants are eligible to become miners or register as service provider here in our network. And then for each individual miners, we help them to apply our software in their nodes, and they're able to host those FHE machine learning models. And the purpose of having FHE involved is because we want to circulate the data values instead of the data itself. You know, in traditional decentralized network, when you want to building a kind of data market or AI market, there is always issues like it's so hard to identify the data ownership, right? I mean, yeah, Flock probably knows quite well because they're working on better learning, and data ownership is so hard to identify. So it's better to not share the data itself, but share the data values. So there are several ways to do that, and definitely FHE is one of the ways we think about from the infrastructure perspective. It's easy to design the network, but very heavy on the computation side. Since we outsource computation resources to public, then we probably got unlimited computation resources by different ways. So we solve that by the DePIN characteristic, and we also because we're using FHE and it's end-to-end kind of like post-quantum technology. So it's then people don't need to worry about their own data to be hacked. Then everything stays encrypted, and during transmitting, during processing period, and yeah. So basically, we designed this because of there is a need, then we can solve it. Then that's and we also have another fundamental thinking, which is we build an infrastructure which is not enough. I mean, a lot of infrastructure companies in Web3, they're building infrastructure, but eventually no one use it. No one use it. So the way we want to solve it is we also have to build an application for end users, and that is from the demand side. So building the DP network is basically we prepare from the supply side with the computation resources, with all the consensus in the DP network to provide enough computation. And on the application side, we build, which is the other part of our application is a proof of human application, is reach out to the end users from demand side, then everything in this network is become like closed loop. Like we have demands, we can create end-to-end D-app with proof of human, and people can use it to solve different issues in the Web3 domain. Like for example, NTCB NTCB scenarios, or use it for distinguish AI bots and humans in social channels, or use it for DeFi scenarios. A lot of place, and individual users can use it directly and being directly involved into a DePIN network. That is something we probably different from other infrastructure. So yeah, so this is basically we building our two fundamental products from the demands and the supply side, two angles. Yeah, thank you so much, and
Thank you,
hopefully,
David.
we will have more stuff coming out in this month, and everybody can test it out our proof of human app, and yeah, thank you.
Yeah, really interesting, David, to hear more on your perspective, where you are and where you're going, and why this is very important, of course. So we also have a set of questions that is directed towards each of our guests, so they can tell a little bit more about how their products and solutions solve very specific problems in the DePIN space. So, Mark, The community often discusses that the GPU solution provided by Aether can reduce the cost of cloud computing to a certain extent because of the well-understood logic for cost reduction and efficiency increase. But from your perspective, is there anything more than this logic? What else can be a surprising industry breakthrough in the near future? What do you think?
Yeah, I mean, good question, right? I think that there's definitely significant and kind of well understood cost reductions and efficiency increases as a result of the kind of fundamentals of DePIN that we spoke about this a little bit earlier. So I think one thing to just kind of double click on there is that the one of the added values for DePIN, particularly and I think Tommy actually spoke about this, particularly as we start to address and counter some of the lack of trust that Web 2 entities have with Web 3, as we start to kind of build on that trust layer, right, we're going to actually be able to go to many more companies and kind of introduce them to this infrastructure that we've built and kind of onboard even more supply, right? Like when you think about the supply that we're able to aggregate at the moment, you also have to kind of put it through this lens of who are the types of companies that trust Web3 projects at the moment, right? And there's definitely a significant portion of the market that doesn't. So I think as we start to kind of address these trust issues, we're going to be looking at kind of bringing on a significant amount of supply beyond that which we already kind of have access to. And I think that supply will predominantly come from companies that would never have considered exposing their compute to external parties before, right? And I think that's like that's the secret sauce. That's like the golden egg, right? If we can kind of get to a point where our infrastructure is so well trusted that compute that would never have been expected to be onboarded into a DePIN can kind of start to be aggregated, connected to this global supply infrastructure, I think that's going to be really, really, really fascinating. I think looking at kind of some industry breakthroughs or innovations, one of them that I think is quite interesting and particularly relevant for maybe my company, but also I guess relevant for some of the others on the panel, is you're starting to see an increase in RWAs for high performance compute, essentially GPU based RWAs. And this is really interesting, right? Because if you look at the way that H100s and essentially these very, very high end GPUs sitting with NVIDIA, right? You can't just access them. You can't just go and buy, an H100 from the NVIDIA shop, right? It's really difficult to get access to them, and as a consumer, for example, it's essentially impossible. So even if you're sitting, in your home and you're super bullish on AI infrastructure, chances are there's pretty much a 0% chance that you can get your hands on some of the key infrastructure that's actually building this high performance compute network. But RWAs are kind of this fractionalized capability to give consumers the ability to purchase a piece of H100 compute, and it also de-risks the ability for a fund who may actually have the chops to qualify for this kind of NCP license that NVIDIA requires, right? They may de-risk that decision with an RWA. So I think that that's going to be really, really interesting. And my expectation here is that RWAs for GPUs will become more standardized. And as a result of that, DeFi will get involved with compute in a way that's a lot more intrinsic than it is today. And that'll drive, really, really interesting supply inroads for DePIN projects as a whole. Because I think at the moment, you look at DePIN, and unless you have a large mining entity or a specific kind of infrastructure fund stand up exclusively to mine in your network, you're necessarily looking at like net new compute, right? But with RWAs, you are, right? You're opening the door to a whole new financial instrument to onboard compute into DePIN that may not be accessible to Web2 companies, for example, even though, of course, we know that the majority of kind of customers for DePIN Compute are Web2. But yeah, I think it's really, really interesting. And I'm looking forward to kind of the proliferation of compute-based RWAs over the next kind of coming 6 months. We'll be launching our own soon, but I think they'll be ubiquitous by the end of the year.
Yeah, really fascinating and interesting, of course, to see where all this is going, and also how you will be part of it, of course. Thank you, Mark. So, Tommy, we are aware that Foundry recently launched a S&P 500 Oracle to encourage miners to frequently predict the price of the S&P 500 index during trading hours. So we would just want to know more about the reasons for designing this mechanism and also the advantages of it, of course.
Yeah, sure. Good question. S&P, so S&P 500 prediction models was really the digital commodity that we chose to incentivize in our subnet. It was definitely a very intentional choice, both because of product market fit and synergy with the existing structure of the BitTensor network. S&P is obviously its most actively traded asset in the world, provides insight into a swath of industries and companies, serves as an indicator for the health of the global economy. So predicting that price is powerful to a large portion of the world, right? As far as if we're talking about a target market that we want to go after and bring into the ecosystem, S&P 500 is about as big as it gets. So so target market fit made a lot of sense for us. And then as far as the structure of BitTensor, the S&P price prediction, it really kind of meshes with the characteristics of the subnet reward mechanisms. Gamification of reward mechanisms has plagued BitTensor subnets. It's been a really, really difficult problem, and has proven almost impossible to stop these attacks. But that's really, I think, because subnets define a method for rewards within the bounds of this system. So they're kind of creating an adversarial environment between the rewards mechanism and the miners trying to game it. And it ends up being an arms race kind of in the wrong way, in the wrong framing. It's an arms race between the rewards mechanism and the miners rather than miner v miner. And I think what I thought about was really the solution to this gamification is to kind of break the bounds of the ecosystem and tie the rewards mechanism to an outside source of truth, right? In this case, the S&P price, and this really kind of reframes that adversarial fight. So it's no longer subnet owners and rewards mechanisms versus miners. But it's rather miner v miner, which is the adversarial environment that BitTensor wants and needs. So I'd say it's a simple but effective rewards mechanism driven by the accuracy of miners predicting the S&P price. And again, this creates the adversarial environment in the correct place between the individual miners. So it's one miner trying to get better than the other, which miners, of course, are machine learning models in this case. And miners are only rewarded for predictions that are more accurate than other miners. And so there's constant competition to improve prediction accuracy, whether it's through unique data sets, different model architectures, tweaking training parameters. And also with this, I think what's important is we're not trying to verify that an actual machine learning model is running. So we're not doing ZK. We're doing nothing to constrain the miners, which I think is important because that is, to me, an untractable battle. It's a waste of resources to constantly be trying to force people to run miners or running ZK. It's computational overhead. So rather, we built this subnet knowing that machine learning models are going to be the best tool for predicting the price. So miners are going to need to use them in order to stay competitive. We created a path where the cheapest and most effective route for miners is to use machine learning models rather than try to force them to do it. We made it so that it's just synergistic for them to do it. So that's like a high level. Obviously, we could get way more in depth, but I'll keep it there. So hopefully, Foundry and kind of this S&P Oracle helps drive the BitTensor ecosystem towards more real world utility, and kind of again changes the framing such that the adversarial environment is miner to miner, and we can kind of drop this subnet owner versus miner competition that exists a lot of places.
Thank you, Tommy. Very insightful, and also interesting to hear about the application here and how it drives kind of competition and driving the industry forward with help of this solution. Thank you. So, Sam at Flock. So nowadays, everyone has seen the potential of Web3, and blockchain technology can be easily applied in real life, as all of us have discussed here the last hour. And Flock is one of the representatives, of course. What is the relationship between Flock and decentralized computing, and what is the relationship between Flock and decentralized storage?
Yeah, I think as I just mentioned a bit earlier, right? For those AI and crypto industries, basically three different things that we need to coordinate together. Compute, data, and the model, right? You're gonna use the compute somewhere, you're gonna use the data somewhere, and then you're gonna generate a model that can be used. So that's basically the triangle in this AI and crypto world. In the infra layer, of course, above this layer, there'll be applications where you can just use the model and then build different agents for different use cases. So yeah, of course, naturally, where Flux sits in is model side, where we work closely with compute and storage providers. So well, I know Mark is here, but we work with other competitors in the ecosystem, say like IONET and ACache, to provide the compute, and also work with storage providers. Sorry, Mike. Storage providers like there are ways like centralized or decentralized ways. Either you store in IPFS or Weave or S3 bucket. So basically, the reason why Flux is doing this is, yes, you can actually, when it comes to AI and the decentralized compute, right? You can actually do it on your own machine, which is maybe the safest way to do so. So your data never leave your own storage, and then you are using your own compute, so you don't have to worry about the calculation is wrong, right? You get tricked by any compute providers, something like that. So that's an authentic way of using, let's say, Flock or using any decentralized trading platform. But then when it comes to the ease of usage, when it comes to the efficientness of decentralized trading, maybe if there are options for people to log on to a website and then just one click, the provider can help them call up a decentralized compute, call up a decentralized storage, and everything this user do is just to provide maybe some of his private data, and then join the training and fine tune the model, and then evaluate the model in a way that he think is right. Then that will make user experience much better, right? Just like people nowadays using MetaMask for their wallet, but it's not the authentic way of using wallet, right? The authentic way of using wallet is to download everything, download the whole world's ledger to your computer, right? That's the real secure way of using it. But then because of the wider adoption of crypto as of today, then tools like MetaMask now become more popular because it's easier for people to use and easier for Web2 people to get adopted to this new industry. So I think that's where Flux sits together with decentralized compute providers and storage providers. What we're doing is basically to fulfill this triangle: model, data, compute, and then make the barrier for people to join decentralized AI to be lower and lower, to basically welcome more people. Oh, thank you.
Hey, sorry guys, I have to drop to another call. But it's been a pleasure. It's been a pleasure being here, guys.
Thanks.
Thank you so much for having me.
Thank you, Mark.
Flock, we're gonna talk.
Yeah, we do.
It's outrageous.
We do.
Right?
We do. Yes, of
But
course.
it's been a pleasure, guys. Thank you so much. I'll chat with you all soon. Thank you.
You, Mark.
Bye.
One last question for Flock here, because we have some similarities in the computation decentralized
Privacy.
AI side. Yes, and how? Just one last question is how do you balance between the efficiency and privacy side? I mean, from an application perspective. I
Yeah,
really
I
want to
think there
hear
are
about your opinions. Yeah.
yeah, they're pretty much they're pretty well, sorry. There are many ways, for when it comes to decentralized machine learning and how people preserve privacy over it, right? So in the last several cycles, people are talking about trusted execution environment, TEE, which
Yeah.
it was cool. It was a brute force solution, which is very cool.
Yeah.
But then because major hardware manufacturers, they decided to abandon the chip like SGX, right, on the
Yeah.
retail side. So yeah, it's not then suitable for Web3 anymore, because for Web3 we want to encourage everyone to join as a validation instead of enterprise level chips, right? So that's yeah, and also there are other ones like FHE, which I know Privacy is doing, and it's actually a pioneer in this industry, and also ZK providers. So I think for us, for Flock is more of a training framework that we can actually work with any of this newly privacy preserving technologies to expand the usage and also to boost the efficiency. Like we had a paper just published several months ago about ZKFL. So basically it's Flock plus ZK to do their privacy, which I think maybe, David, someday we can also draft a paper together about FHE FL,
Sure.
right? So
Yeah, definitely.
it's still the same training framework, but with FHE, maybe things can be even more efficient, because nowadays I know many people are talking about ZKML, but to be honest, many of those ZKML claims are actually ZK, ML. So they're using ZK to do the data authentication proof and then machine learning. So it's not a full ZKML as the term suggests, right? It's ZK, ML. So yeah, I really want to see one day, we can do a full cycle machine learning decentralized in a private preserving way. But yeah, we're on our way. And as you said, David, the efficiency is a very important issue. And if privacy can resolve this in a beautiful fashion, of course, it will be really, really hype.
Yeah, I fully agree. Thank you, Song. Let's talk later, privately.
Yeah, sure.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, I think today we have pretty much talking about everything in the DePIN and AI track, and we have a lot of insights from those wonderful guests here. And thank you, Mark. Thank you, Tommy, and thank you, Song. And yeah, pretty sure we can find some synergies later. Yeah, thank you.
Thanks, guys. Take care.
Thanks, Tommy. Thanks, guys. Bye, everyone.